Wonder Woman 1984 is written by Patty Jenkins along with Jeff Johns, who has written and produced a ton of DC content, some good and some bad, and David Callahan, who got his start by writing the original Doom movie and co-wrote the first Expendables film with Sly Stallone. I do wonder how much he contributed to get a writing credit here. I'm just going to start out by giving you a summary of my thoughts. The plot made no sense. The acting was serviceable for a superhero film. The music was fine, but a lot of it was forgettable. I did like the colorful look of the film that the first Wonder Woman film was missing, but its story was more emotionally resonant to me. This is a zany, wacky, silly superhero flick that attempts to do some commentary about greed, but it's also off the wall that it's hard to take any commentary seriously. The first 10 minutes of Wonder Woman 84 starts off strong with a cool, low-stakes action scene, an athletic competition on Themyscira with a young Diana, involving horseback riding and archery. Soon after, the introduction to the 80s feels like a classic Superman film, especially the Hans Zimmer music, which seems to call back to John Williams' score from the Donner film. There's even an early scene where a cartoonishly bad robber hangs a little kid over a balcony, like he's Michael Jackson and it's 2002. Let's go ahead and just say spoilers for the rest of this review so I can speak freely. The movie starts to show some cracks with the introduction of Kristen Wiig's Barbara Minerva character. Her acting isn't bad, but she's portrayed almost exactly like Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman in Batman Returns. Extremely nerdy and socially awkward at first, and then a badass villain after a magical transformation. Only problem is, it's nowhere near as good as Catwoman in Batman Returns. It just all feels really unoriginal. It's intended to provide a comedic element, though I wasn't laughing out loud at any of her awkwardness. She and Diana bond because they're both sort of outsiders. It's also here that the film's MacGuffin, the Dreamstone element, is introduced, which turns this movie into a movie about making wishes. Barbara wishes to be strong and sexy like her new friend Diana. We're also introduced to Pedro Pascal's oil tycoon, Maxwell Lord, about half an hour in. He played total badass characters as Oberon and Din Djarin, but here he's a cartoonish villain in a pinstriped suit.
I like to party.
He kind of reminds me of Gene Hackman's more comedic take on Lex Luthor. He's chewing the scenery, and his character is a fun huckster at first, and later a more tragic figure. He is humanized a little through his relationship with his son. So my biggest complaint about this movie is the fact that Diana brings Chris Pine's character Steve Trevor back to life using the Dreamstone. I think Steve Trevor's death at the end of the first film was emotionally satisfying and a defining moment in Diana's story arc. A story where Diana wishes Steve back to life in the body of another man is where the film goes in the wrong direction for me. We didn't need a retread of Steve Trevor and Diana's love story. I didn't find the fish out of water stuff with Steve Trevor's 1980s fashion choices that funny either. This actually didn't have as much 80s nostalgia as I thought it was going to have, which was fine because 80s nostalgia is way overdone. Bringing back Chris Pine just made it feel like they were really short on ideas for the script. I don't consider myself a feminist, but it has to be a feminist criticism that Wonder Woman relies so heavily on a man here. Isn't Wonder Woman supposed to be a strong, independent woman? So Diana's story arc here is a minor part of the movie. She does learn how to make the invisible Wonder Woman plane, which is fan service, but it's not a story arc. Maxwell Lord uses Barbara to gain access to the Dreamstone, and he wishes to become the Dreamstone. So now he's the MacGuffin? And he can grant one wish to every person on Earth, and ends up with all of the world's oil, and surprise, the wishes come at a price. Steve Trevor literally name drops the monkey's paw to explain this. So now Maxwell Lord comes across like a coked up businessman, and he's granting wishes left and right, and chaos is ensuing. This is where the film really feels like absolute nonsense. But you know what? It's a dumb comic book movie. I enjoyed Aquaman and Shazam more than Batman v Superman and Man of Steel, so I don't mind that this one took a lighter, more cartoonish approach. Though it's definitely a tonal shift from the first Wonder Woman film, which was more serious and dramatic with the grim setting of World War I. I do think the first Wonder Woman film was objectively better than this. There are pacing problems. It's an hour and 20 minutes in until we get our second action scene with Wonder Woman. And I'm guessing that's what a lot of people want out of something like this. There's also just too many scenes of characters investigating the Dreamstone by looking at ancient texts. This has the same problem that many sequels have when they try to have two villains. There's just not enough time spent with the main character. Spider-Man 3 made the mistake of trying to have three villains. I think this is usually a problem of studio intervention, probably wanting more toys to sell. This movie's 2.5 hours long, and I was ready for it to be over after 2. But I guess we did need a big CG climax. Gal Gadot is great as Diana, and Chris Pine is good too, but it's like, why is he there? Pedro Pascal is entertaining, and his character has some complexity, though Kristen Wiig's Cheetah felt unnecessary. The music was acceptable, but didn't stand out from other Zimmer scores. That's kind of always the problem with a Zimmer score. The most redeeming moments of the film are the ones where Wonder Woman kicks ass, and there's just not enough of those scenes. I did really like the scene where Wonder Woman flew through the air. It was just a visually appealing and well-scored scene. Diana not having a strong story arc is definitely a detriment to the film. Max Lord and Barbara Minerva get more involved story arcs, but they are both somewhat cliched characters. 2 hours in, Barbara gets a second wish that turns her into Cheetah, even though everyone else only got one wish, so this doesn't really make any sense. Then Maxwell Lord gets on TV and tells everyone to make a wish, even though initially he had to be touching someone to grant a wish. So the rules for all the wish making are convoluted, and this is why it all falls apart in the end and just becomes pure schlock. That's when Wonder Woman shows up in ridiculous gold armor and fights a CG cheetah in a dimly lit action scene that is simultaneously the worst and best scene in the movie because it gave me a good laugh, and also it meant the movie was almost over. I'm not saying this film was all a bad time, it had its moments. The ending doesn't really make any sense though. Somehow Wonder Woman is able to broadcast a message out to make everyone in the world renounce their wishes and just turn everything back to normal. I know people will try to defend this movie as pure escapist fantasy, but even a movie that is pure escapism needs a good original story arc for its main character, and the arc is just too similar to the one from the first movie. Since this film is all about wishes, I'm gonna go ahead and wish now that Wonder Woman 3 turns out better than this, because it's already been confirmed. Oh, and can we talk about how weird it is that Wonder Woman was hooking up with Steve Trevor in another guy's body, and then at the end she sees the other guy, only Steve Trevor's not in his body anymore, and he doesn't remember her, and it's like Wonder Woman technically had sex with this random stranger, but he'll never know it happened. Yeah, it's weird.
I like your outfit.